Welcome everyone. I'm Joel Draper and I'm a director at Lisson Gallery, and I'm pleased you could join us this evening for a very special conversation between Nan Goldin and Jack Pierson, moderated by Lyle. A few pieces of housekeeping. Tonight's event is being filmed, so please ensure that your phones are turned off. I want to extend a huge thank you to Lyle, the SVA faculty, and the team here at the theatre for helping us put this together so quickly. And just a reminder that Jack's exhibition, Pomegranates, will have its final day this Saturday, so please do drop by. On your way in this evening, you would have received a small card that has details for Lisson, as well as for Jack's own gallery space, Elliot Templeton Fine Arts, which opened 2 Sundays ago in Chinatown. I encourage everyone to visit. Without any further ado, I want to introduce tonight's speakers. Nan Goldin. Nan's accomplishments, please. Nan's accomplishments are far too many to mention. Born in Washington, D.C. in 1953, she's one of the most high-profile artists of our time. Her work's exploration of the human experience is legendary, and has profoundly influenced subsequent generations. Her work, The Ballad of Sexual Dependency, documents life in Provincetown, New York, Berlin, and London, beginning in the 1970s and 80s, and up to the present day. Constantly evolving, it has grown into a multimedia presentation of almost 700 slides, accompanied by an eclectic soundtrack. Goldin photographed the world of her inner circle of creative bohemian friends with raw tenderness. Her photographs give us snapshots of intimacy and coupling, the quotidian, wild parties, and the struggle between autonomy and dependency. Goldin's work has been presented and collected around the globe by the world's most important museums. And she's actually just returned from Amsterdam, where the second iteration of her show, This Will Not End Well, has just opened at the Stedelijk Museum. Having premiered at the Moderna Museet, the exhibition will tour to the Neue National Gallery in Berlin, Pirelli Hangar Bicocca in Milan, and finally onto the Grand Palais in Paris. Jack Pierson. Jack was born in 1960 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. He graduated from the Massachusetts College of Art in 1984, where he participated in the Studio for Interrelated Media, one of the earliest formal academic programs dedicated to the study of performance art. Emerging from the 1980s milieu of the Boston School of Photographers, Pierson was drawn into a world of gendered, punk-influenced performativity. His mode of non-hierarchical cultural compilation and processes of impulse-led editing allows Pierson to create personal and universal narratives across photography, collage, sculptural assemblage, and installation. Jack's work has also been presented and collected by institutions across the world. And for any visiting Boston this fall, Jack's work is on view at the MFA, the ICA, and at his alum, the Mass Art Museum. Quite a homecoming tour. As I mentioned, Jack has added another feather to his cap by opening his own gallery at 105 Henry Street. The gallery will harken back to the 90s when Jack would frequent vintage stores, where charismatic store owners would regale visitors with lore and gossip. Jack will present work from his own collection or borrowed from friends with a loose, overarching focus on the male form. And finally, Lyle, whose insightful interview with Jack is published in the current issue of Brooklyn Rail. We've got a few copies left at the front or the exit as you're on your way out tonight. Educated at Columbia University and then at Oxford, where he was a Rhodes Scholar, Lyle is a core faculty member of the School of Visual Arts, teaching history, theory, and studio critique of photography in the MFA and BFA programs. He is the author of many books, including How to Look at Outsider Art, published by Abrams in 2005, The Edge of Vision, The Rise of Abstraction in Photography, published by Aperture in 2009, and The Critical Eye, 15 Pictures to Understand Photography, published by Intellect Press in 2019. He has published hundreds of catalog essays and articles on art and photography, and contributed to such publications as the New York Times, Art in America, Aperture, Bomb, Harper's, and the Brooklyn Rail. As a curator, he has organized exhibitions in the United States and internationally, and has lectured at many institutions, including the Met, the Whitney, and Yale University. He is the series editor of Investigations of Lens and Screen Arts, published by the School of Visual Arts and Intellect Press. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lyle, and thank you again for joining.
Thanks for coming. Couple of shout-outs or a couple of thanks right off the bat. First, I want to thank the School of Visual Arts and the theater staff. It's been difficult, and we had to move fast to get this together, and we had a lot of people helping out. Adam Bell, particularly in the MFA program at the School of Visual Arts. So I want to thank everybody who's worked on this.
Thank you, Adam.
And I also want to thank my two co-conspirators up here. Just up until basically a month ago, I'd never met either one of them. I'd been looking at their work for decades, but had never had a personal contact. And I have to say that the experience of meeting both of them over the last month and a half or so has been really wonderful and in many ways transformative for me in my thinking about photography. So I want to thank them both again for being here, for agreeing to do this. Thank you both.
Thank you, Lyle.
Thank you, Lyle.
Thank you, Nan.
So I did want to set a couple of ground rules, not really ground rules, but just to give a sense of what will happen, what will transpire. First of all, we're not going to do a Q&A after this is over because it's too unwieldy and there's too many people and all that stuff. Second of all, I want to focus this, or approximate reason for being here is Jack's show at Lisson Gallery called Pomegranates, and you'll see a lot more from that exhibition. It's really the occasion that kind of brought us all together. And so we have lots and lots of pictures, but I think where we will focus our attention is on the show, and I think it would be very interesting for me to get reactions from both Jack about the work that's up and also where Nan wants to chip in. I also have some particular slides and we might start out with, that involve both of them. And that will maybe set the scene for the show at Lisson Gallery, okay? So I'm going to use my clicker here, and I want to go, actually, this starts quite far back with a show that Jack did. We may not have time to do all that, so I want to click all the way forward and start with maybe some background, okay? So you're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to be jumping around in the images of this presentation to try not to get seasick. So anyway, so I think I can just click forward on this. There's just so much wonderful stuff here that's hard to not to stop, and I will go back and touch on some of these because they're just absolutely wonderful. This is the show, and again, we will go back and talk about this in more detail, and I'll have a chance to ask Jack and Nan for some questions about this. But let's see if we can move forward and get to the front of this. Sorry about this. There's a lot of pictures in this presentation. Okay, we're almost there. Yeah. And this really constitutes a real walkthrough for the show. I want to go back. Let's go back. So my introduction to both of these artists was really through their published work, and they, as different as they are in photography, and you'll see this when we look at the actual images, they're so different in the way they work. They're so different in the things they notice, and yet the impression I got from both of these books, and it's not just the covers that struck me as similar somehow, but there is a desire to kind of capture and understand aspects of experience that seemed to me that many other photographers were just missing. And these two books are very, very special, and I think anyone who has spent time with either one of them knows why people like to keep them. There's millions of photo books, but these two in particular are things that you want to have close to you. Anyway, so we can start out with these two. You can see, at least physically, there's some similarities, but I wanted to talk initially about a myth, or let's say a misconception. And that has to do with the relationship between these two. And it's a relationship I'm not totally clear on myself. But this idea of a Boston school that somehow created this idea that everybody was working off the same page.
Lyle, it was a joke.
Yeah, exactly.
I made a joke.
and that's what I wanted.
And it became a fucking name of a
And it-
movement.
Right, and it's a total fiction, of course. It's complete fabrication. But can you guys clarify how you met each other and how you came to know each other's work?
Well, I knew Nan's work way before. Like, I just told her this story of being in freshman photography 101 in Boston in 1980. And, like, the first thing they said was, and Nan was always big, you know what I mean? Like, and the pictures never got small. But she was always big, but I hadn't heard of her except through Mark.
Yeah.
Because I actually lived in an apartment with Nan Goldin prints taped to the wall that they had traded, I think. And
Mark Morris wrote.
Mark Morris wrote.
And the pictures above us are two pictures of Jack taken by Mark
Really?
back in the day.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, I didn't notice that. Anyway, so the teacher was like, "Oh, well, you should. I don't know if you know the work of Nan Goldin."
Yeah, but it was 1980. I
Yeah.
wasn't really known.
I know, but you were known in the museum school. You
Oh, yeah.
already.
That's
and
right.
So, Nan had moved to New York, and by '83, when was the ballad published?
84?
84.
Yeah.
Oh, 80
so-
or 85.
85.
I don't know. There was a
With
huge
Lyle.
mystique. Like, it never seemed like you weren't famous to me. Somehow,
In
but
my
I didn't.
own mind, maybe.
I didn't, know you, and it just seemed like a far off thing. She lived in New York, and she knew all these.
Yeah, which was
people,
cool. And Boston.
you know what I mean? Like, I was in Boston, but when she lived in Boston, I'm sure you were thinking about New York too.
Every day.
Exactly.
That's
So
all
when
we
you-
talked about
when
at the
you're-
clubs. When are
Exact-
you moving to New York?
Exactly.
Every
When are you
night.
moving to New York? The Peter Pan bus once a month would be $1. We'd all be on it. Anyway, that's what towns like that do, and that's why they become exciting, is because you're so dying to make it something other than it is. And one of the theories I float about the uniting thing about the Boston School, even though we were generations, but like years apart, like there was no us sitting in cafes. Like,
That's right. If there were cafes,
but
Hubbard
we
Square.
all had access to the Museum of Fine Arts, which had huge holdings of John Singer Sargent. And
Yeah.
for me, I think that made it seem like, wow, travel, glamour, pretty ladies and gorgeous dress. Like, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
we all saw that. And that's one of the things Boston gave us, was like this idea of an itinerant artist that made things up in many different places. You know?
Yeah, I like that a lot, Jack. I like that a lot because
That's
there's
great.
so much about movement in your work and about getting out or going places and not being stuck in the same place. You particularly were moving around a lot, but Nan was too.
Yeah. And your early black and white pictures of Boston look like Paris, no? Like that's,
Well,
to me,
here's
part
a
of the
good
point.
example.
It looked like,
Nan, take a look at this. You know, this was
I
from
remember this
'73.
picture.
Okay. Anyway, but what struck me about it, there were a couple of things that I just wanted to ask you about it. This, first of all, you're talking about the MFA in Boston, and
This is long before school.
this was '73.
I went to school in, I don't know, 77 or something.
Well, that's what I wanted to.
76.
So what? This is on the Esplanade, right?
Yeah.
So what was Boston for you before you got there? I mean, you're really close. You're not far away from it. Jack wasn't that far away from it either. So what was Boston before New York? What was Boston? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, really provincial.
Uh-huh.
I lived with the Queens, and we lived inside because they couldn't go out in the daytime.
Yeah, that's
We're
right.
talking the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't leave the house.
And but
We went out every night. So it was about, the other side for me. For a couple of years, that was my life.
but that was your entry into kind of the other side in terms of like an urban setting, right? I mean, in that sense, it was really.
I don't know
seems
how,
important.
I mean, it was through David Armstrong
Right.
that I met B, the person on the far right, and
Right.
then I went to live with her and my friend Kenny, and David was always around. David was really pivotal in my life from the age of 15 till he died. He's the one who named me Nan.
Right,
and,
that's right.
Yeah, I helped him come out. So we were like, bonded forever.
Yeah.
So New York, Boston, my presentation to Boston was through David, basically.
Right. But it does seem to me like in terms of some sense of community, and maybe even for Jack too, I'm not sure you can weigh in on this, that Boston was not just a place to get the hell out of. I mean, clearly it was, right?
It became that, yeah.
It became that. It became that. And I was interested in the earlier part. But how did you guys actually get to know each other? Sort of face to face.
Pat Hearn was always telling me, you have to look at Jack's work, you have to look at Jack's work. And I curated a show about AIDS in 1989.
Right.
And unfortunately, I hadn't seen Jack's work, so he was the only missing artist, as far as I'm concerned, because the whole community was involved in that. And it was the first show about AIDS, much to my surprise.
Now, was that Artist Space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They asked me to curate something, and I thought, oh, there's been too many shows about AIDS. Turned out there hadn't been any in 1989,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Yeah, incredible. By the way, I want to point out, if you haven't seen the film that where Nan is a focus, which is all the beauty and the bloodshed.
Yeah.
I urge you to watch it. It's an amazing record. It's a wonderful film in its own right. But I think you see how important Nan has been in a couple of occasions over the last 30 years, quite apart from the history of photography, and she deserves a watch just for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. During the AIDS crisis and the opioid crisis, she's been really, really important in both of those. So watch it. That's all I'll say. So
Anyway, then
Yeah.
Pat Hearn kept telling me about Jack, and then finally we met through Mark. No, Mark was already.
I would say, yeah, I would think Mark brought me to the Bowery one time, like on a, for something.
party.
Something, and then I think probably at an early screening of The Ballad, which always, like, seemed like a major thing. I know now it's really major, but
It was
even
more
then-
fun then, because it was all the people in the pictures were the audience.
yeah.
It was my best audience ever.
And I think, like I said to Lyle the other day, like when I looked at Nan's pictures, it was like looking at pictures of the Rolling Stones or something. Like it was like, what? And that guy? And oh, he's here. And oh, look how cool he looks in that. Like it was like I was a fan somehow, too. And then I was getting to hang out with her, which is part of the,
The 90s, we hung out.
the 90s. I didn't really start hanging out with her
yeah.
as a friend because, like, I finally started showing work, and I wasn't just like Mark Marcer's boyfriend.
yes, not just Mark's boyfriend. Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to take a look at some other things as well. Let's move forward. I'm thinking, and we can go back through the show as well and look at portraits. But this is from The Lonely Life, from the book, and I'm really interested in how you developed, and this is true for both of you, how you developed your relationship with the camera and how to use it, and how it became personal for you. When did you pick up your first camera? Why did you pick it up? Why was that a good thing to do? Why did it feel right?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I was just always into, like, I picked up a Xerox machine before I picked up a camera.
Wow.
And that was at Mass Art, right?
No, it was even before in the high school. You could pay a nickel and make copies of stuff in book, and that seemed like photography to me. And like, I got creative with a Xerox machine more than a camera. But then by the time you went to college, it was probably my first year of college. Then I got a real camera with real film and started to use it.
Yeah.
But I felt like I wouldn't say I knew what I was doing, but I felt like I knew, I had schooled myself in imagery enough that I, knew how to, like, I felt comfortable with it.
Right, but clearly it wasn't the only device in your imaginative.
Yeah, it was always like, like color Xerox was big then. And
Right.
Yeah.
anything that reproduced, like I was more into the idea that it could be reproduced many times than I was, say, a perfect print.
Right. But it's kind of interesting to hear you talk conceptually about that, like the multiple reproduction and all that stuff. Because it's a funny thing, I think of you as much more material-oriented. And Nan, I wanted to see if you could kind of cast your memory back a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, I know when I first.
Yeah, and talk about you and the camera.
Yeah, I was at hippie free school, and the teachers were students at the graduate student education at MIT. So Land gave us Polaroids.
Right.
He wanted to see, or whoever was running Polaroid at the time, it was like an experiment in education. So they wanted to see what the students would do. And I became obsessed with the Polaroid, and that became like my identity. So then I guess when I was 18, my father gave me his Nikon, and I was off and
Yeah.
running.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And well, let me go back here. Let's see if I can go back. And then we'll work our way back. I want to go back to these are. We'll come back to some of these portraits, but one of the things I like so much about the show, and I know, Nan, you have very different reactions to it, or we had different reactions when we walked through it, was it's an incredibly material show. It's just loaded with stuff, you know. It's got plastic letters, it's got video, it's got photo boxes pasted to the walls, it's got vitrines, it's got things that are installed. And when we were looking at, let's take a look back here, see if we can go back. Oops, yeah, I'm sorry. That's a little tricky to do this, but when we were looking at some of the collages, for example, we happen to be talking about the fact that I was reacting to the materiality of the photographs. And it seemed to me in our conversation, you guys had really different sort of orientations toward that, toward the idea of the physical reality of the way photographs are. That is, whether they're a print or a thing on a wall or whatever they are, whether they're in a magazine or a book. And I wonder, Jack, if you talk a little bit about just the reaction that you've had to kind of the different physical realities of the photograph and its many iterations.
Well, I think, my interest in materiality, yes, I did color Xerox and stuff like that, but whatever, when I got to New York in 1983, it was the beginning, really, of photography being in art galleries and not in photo galleries. And it seemed to me that they were always huge and in these big frames.
Exactly.
And I was broke and trying to come up with rent, and I just knew from experience, how much does that cost? And there's 20 of them, and nobody wants to hear from me until I have 10 to show. And so I had to figure out how I was going to get photography on the wall without the expense
of making these giant prints.
And I still do,
wherever.
30 years in, this is my solution to a big
a problem you solved 30 years ago.
photo, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the tin costs a little bit of money and the magnets are surprisingly expensive. But it has a big impact. I think when you walk up to it, I want it to look like something made out of photography.
Yeah, and of course, but one of the things you said to me that I liked so much was that it made more sense to put pieces together than it was to try to make something big. And that you wanted the pieces to be small enough so that if you had to stick them in a box and go someplace else or move out.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. I was constantly itinerant, and
Yes.
for many years I just had photo boxes full of postcards and clippings and full-page pictures of magazines that became my environment when I got there somehow. I travel with a certain amount of ephemera that makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Did you put it up wherever you were?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
That was my question as well. Stuff that you would always stick up, almost like a talisman. Did you do that when you traveled, Nan? Do you stick stuff up, or it's not that?
I
No.
definitely stick stuff up. Yeah. But I mean, not in hotels. I just take paintings down in hotels.
Yeah. I don't anymore, but initially when you were, stuck in shitty hotel, brighten it up, tape some things over the stuff.
Of course. It makes perfect sense. But I was thinking about your reaction in the gallery the other day when we were trying to talk about this materiality business. And it wasn't, and by materiality, you can look at a collage like this and you can see all the different ways that photographs actually exist as physical things, whether, again, whether it's in a cheap magazine or whether it's a poster someplace or it's a nice print or it's a Polaroid or whatever. It's got all these different kind of material features. But you had a quite different response to that. And I wonder if you talk a little bit about your sense of what photographs are and why you like them or how they work.
I care a lot about books. I mean, I'm kind of reverent about photo books. And I care a lot about keeping it material, not having it digital. I mean, I use digital camera now. I print, unfortunately, digitally. But I still believe in analog, and my slides and my slideshows are the most important part of my work. So I want to preserve the materiality of photography. Most of the processes I use don't exist anymore. So that's really was alarming to me to realize. Like, you can't dupe slides, you can't make,
right.
We used to be able to go into any of those copy shops and make 8x10s from slides. That's like so far, and even the big scanners don't exist. So, I'm a, kind of Rip Van Winkle kind of thing from the past.
Woke up after 20 years.
Yeah. So, but I, it took me a long time to take photography seriously.
What was it before then? Before you took it seriously?
I always wanted to be a filmmaker. I thought film and drawing, like the hand on a piece of paper, is what I have the most respect for. I just thought photography was kind of an easy way to make art. So maybe because I never held it as precious, it was easier for me.
Yeah, did you think it was cheating somehow?
I just thought it was not as important as film or drawing.
Mm-hmm.
But suddenly, I don't know, in the last few years, I suddenly realized, wow, photography really is art. But, I grew up with these men who took, vertical black and white pictures of light, and that was the law at the time. Nobody took horizontal pictures. No one used color. So, I mean, I wasn't taken seriously for a long, long time because I broke all those rules. So, that was kind of, stamped into me. That's photography.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. We can jump a little forward. It was a topic I was going to get to later, but I think it's totally appropriate right here. And again, I'm sorry about this, but I have to click forward. And I want to get to something that has at least certain traumatic associations, so I should warn Jack that this is coming up, okay? It's not going to be terrible, don't worry. But let's see.
Oh, beautiful.
Not that.
What?
Okay, this thing that says Edward Hopper and Jack Pierson over here, American Dreaming, right? That's the catalog cover from the.
Was that an exhibition?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, at the Whitney. That's
great.
And then I paired it with this other image, which is from your experience at the Louvre, I believe, right?
It's from Scopophilia, yeah.
Yes, Scopophilia. When you had, in a sense, the run of the Louvre to pair your own pictures with things in the collection.
That's what I'm doing right now. I'm working on that piece again.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I didn't know that, but that's going to be another experience, or you're going to be...
Yeah, I'm changing it. I mean, I just redid it.
Uh-huh.
It's based on Ovid's Metamorphosis, and it originally had music sung in the Louvre, and but now I've gone back and made it many more stories from Ovid, and much more precise. I have 9 books coming out, like a box set of all my slideshows.
Yeah.
Each book is an entire slideshow. So
all the images.
Yeah. So basically, that's publishing everything I ever took. And I'm working on Scopophilia, the book right now. And it's basically pairing these myths of Diana and Pygmalion and Orpheus and Eurydice with my work. And so I photograph in museums, mostly Renaissance art. And then I find the same faces in my own work.
And sometimes it's new photographs you make, or sometimes it's stuff in the images
It's in my archive.
in the
No,
archive.
I don't
Yeah.
take pictures very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I did during COVID, but that was
Well,
rare.
I want to get to that, actually. I want to talk about what happened during COVID to both of you, because I think it was really a crucial
Yeah.
time in a lot of ways. But I wanted to point out, for Jack, we go back much further in time than Scopophilia to this experience you had. And it relates to this idea that Nan was talking about earlier about having to fight your way through other people's attitudes toward your work, right? And tell us a little bit about what happened with you and Edward Hopper
Yeah.
in this.
Jeez, this is such an ambush. You know, I was asked to curate a show. There was a curator, Klaus Curtis, who worked for the Whitney. And the Whitney is tasked year after year with getting hoppers on the wall because that's what sells the tickets.
Really?
Yeah, it's what they got.
In the
Really?
summer, when people come to New York, they want to see Edward Hopper paintings at the Whitney. And so they have to come up with a million, like, Hopper's flowers, Hopper's shutters, Hopper's lawns, Hopper's like this. And so Klaus was very smart and thought, oh, well, this guy is talking about loneliness, isolation, you know, heartbreak, sunlight on, you know, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we, you know, get him and let him do it? And so I walked into it fully like, wow, great. And it was a cool show. Did you see it?
No, I did not, actually.
It was a pretty cool show in the old Whitney, like, downstairs little thing. And
On Madison.
Yeah.
and you know, but it's like, pick out Hopper masterpieces that are beloved through all space and time, and put my, like, crappy painting of a Lucky Strike pack next to it. You know what I mean?
I
That
think
made
it's
me-
great.
Yeah, and I thought it looked great too, and, like, you know, or put my, like, weird bittersweet, like, spread. The critic of choice at that time, like, laid into it.
Who shall remain nameless?
Oh, I don't care. Peter.
No, tell us.
Peter Sheldell.
Oh,
Peter
good.
Sheldell, yeah.
And he just was like, who does this little asshole think he is? How dare he? What he doesn't know about Hopper is like blah, 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 blah. And it just sort of like, boom, like it was like a full stop on a certain level. It made me feel terrible, but whatever you live. Like,
But Klaus
you
was
got-
a great curator, too.
But Klaus was a great curator, and you know, you would have thought Sheldell would know, like, hey, look, they got to get the hoppers on the wall, and this guy walked into it,
Cut him some slack, okay?
you know.
I think it's a great pairing.
It was okay, you know, it was okay. I think part of the other reason he came to it is because I had made a piece that had a lot of Hopper imagery in it.
Right, right. And again, I'm really interested that both of you, obviously at different times, different situations, have had to deal with, let's call it, a certain deliberate incomprehension about your work. And I'm just wondering how you got through that. I mean, again, this whole idea of coming to New York and going, I'm nothing, you know, like they got these museums and these galleries and like.
And nobody was in galleries when I came to New York. Like
Not for photo.
Jean-Michel was one of the first
Yeah.
to be in galleries in like 81. So at the beginning, artists, you know, did these collaborative things like Times Square.
Right.
They took up over an old bordello and, you know, it was incredible, all kinds of art for days. So, yeah, there wasn't really a gallery system yet.
Certainly not for photography, but there was the beginning of certainly a stronger gallery system for painters and artists.
Yeah, and paint, like Nan said, like painting is still, like, the reason when I came to New York, the pictures were this big was because they were screaming to be taken seriously alongside painting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's why, you know, I went to Mass Art to try to, like, because Stephen Shore taught there, and to me, the Stephen Shore Association was the Warhol Factory. Like, let me get in there and be with the guy that was at the Warhol Factory. And then he had changed to, like, new color photography that was, like, pristine
Right.
and of the same suburban locations that I just
Ran away from.
And part of,
Peter used to say, blow it up and they'll call it art. Peter Hujar.
That's what Peter Hujar used to say.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And he never
Go
went-
big or go home.
Never went, past the size that he believed in.
Exactly, and so, but that's what I'm saying is like there's a certain amount of, I'll just speak for myself, what I do that makes it look very easy and talent-free
Yes.
somehow, until,
And style-driven. Right?
and style-driven, and like,
Clever.
And
Very
yeah.
clever.
Yeah.
and those things are all fine with me, you know what I mean? Those things are all fine, but they don't seem like important somehow, like, or art with a capital A. I always say photography with a capital P.
Well, you're saying
I'm
that
just
now
like,
or
I'm
in
not
the
a
past?
photographer with a capital
probably
P.
Yeah,
actually-
You know
me
what I mean?
either.
I don't think you are either,
No.
but there are
I hope not.
photographers with capital.
No, I would say that it's actually probably still the case. I mean, there still is this kind of residual underlying, how should we say, concern with the seriousness and the ambition of the work. And it's kind of bubbles under the surface. But you must, there were some really strong reactions to your work. And what interests me about those reactions is they were all about the subject. It's like you weren't even a photographer,
No.
right? You were just like, I don't know how those pictures got made. They suddenly appeared, and what people talked about was who's in the picture. That is, drag queens are in the picture, and people doing drugs and having sex, they're in the picture. Did
Yeah, I
it
mean,
strike you as quite odd that you seem to disappear in the face of your own subjects?
No, I never thought of that. I mean, yeah, I was there because I got a lot of shit. So I knew I was there. But people, always focus, they still do, on sex and drugs in the 80s. And my work's not about any of that. It's about what it is to be human. It's about the human condition, to be pretentious, but that's what it's about. And those are just part of, the lives that I've been part of. So that kind of emphasis is really kind of sensational and
Yeah, always,
diminutive, very diminutive.
And it's about light and illuminating color. So, like, your pictures are incredibly formal and beautiful too, but I think subject matter tends to.
Well, maybe you want to click.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, my bad. Oh, no. Should we stick it? We probably shouldn't stay with this one. Although I did want to talk
This
about
is
self-portraits.
gorgeous. Wow, I never saw
Where'd
that.
you find this?
I'm not telling.
Wow.
I'm not telling. It's kind of
Wow,
wonderful.
what year is that, Jack?
I don't know. It's like 10 years ago now. I did a piece in L.A. that was a huge sculpture that said "The End of the World," and at the last minute, I was very good friends with a guy who does movie
Right.
advertising.
Yeah.
And he took and I said, "Do you think we could make an art format that looks like a Blockbuster?" And
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. No, I loved it. I
so he took the picture, Tim Palin, and like it was literally like he took the picture, and 2 hours later, this was there. Like it's such a formula. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. That's so perfect. What do I want to talk? No, here's what I want to do. Again, as you say, her pictures are very much about, and this is what I saw. This is what I reacted to immediately when I first saw your work.
That picture's about the bird that died above my head.
That's right. That's about the bird that hit the window, and that was
Yeah.
taken in
Sweden.
Sweden, Stockholm, I think.
Yeah.
So pretty, I don't think I've ever seen it.
But I was so struck when I saw these pictures, whether they were of you or the friends, was that there was this first of all this incredible tenderness about all the pictures, and the other thing was that there was such a sensitivity to this kind of Vermeer-like light, and it was almost like the pictures only existed for the light. Even some of the most difficult ones that you made, it was almost like it was all justified somehow by the fact that there was this incredibly delicate thing going on.
But Lyle, the 80s, I didn't see any light. I lived in a dark loft and I used a flash. So, I mean, light came into my work in the end of the 80s
Yeah.
and became one of the most important things and remained so. But, I never saw daylight. I didn't even know that daylight, that the color of flesh changed during the day. until 1988. So
God.
your thing about light is beautiful, and thank you, but I wish it was true, but it's not quite true. Thank you.
It does actually opens up this other thing I wanted to talk to you and Jack about, and that is the importance of photographing yourself.
Yeah.
Okay? And this comes up over and over again, but I want to go back and let's get a picture of Jack's self right here. If we take a look at this, Jack, that's you.
Right.
Okay?
That's Jack's self-portrait. for
Yeah.
sure.
And what I'm thinking about is like different ways of doing the same thing, which is trying to get an impression of yourself. And one of the things you and I talked about when I was in your studio was that you actually didn't call what you were doing self-portraiture, but that's what you were doing in gathering pictures of things that you liked or things that you were attracted to and assembling them almost like a Where's Waldo? I'm in here, but you have to find me. And I wonder if you talk about that process a little bit, because it's so different from Nan, who is like, this is me, I'm showing you.
Well, Nan's so pretty that it's easy.
I was.
And not to embarrass you, but this isn't
No, I
called
know.
self-portrait. But like,
But I couldn't find the James Dean. I could not
okay.
find a good version of that.
and like, I don't think that, is it a self-portrait? I made this piece in like 1985.
Right.
And we lived in a room in the Lower East Side and was all of a sudden turned on to these old 50s and 60s porno magazines. And also in cinema, like, I don't know if it's true for gay guys. Like, I feel like it was common to go through a serial killer sort of fascination. You know? And it was probably my
Are you
proximity.
over that?
Right.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long-lasting one, I think.
And that was who you identified with. There weren't cheery gay boys on TV
Yeah.
and rom-coms.
Right,
like, you were
exactly.
like, yes,
That's me.
that's me. And I don't know. I think I thought what I was doing was like, oh, I'm acting like a guy that's like some freaked out guy taping porn together and like cutting up the bodies and like taping
So that
it
was the
and
kind of fictional.
making another skin, and I'm like this kind of guy that does that. And
Kind of a Hannibal
like, you know,
Lecter kind of thing.
yeah, and I was like, but I'm like that guy. And then, it took me probably 10 years to realize, like, no, I am that guy.
That's right. I like that,
And so in that way, maybe it's a self-portrait, but this was designed to look like scary to me, kind of like an
Yeah,
obsessive.
now it
and,
looks just like the internet, actually.
yeah, but also, they're all hand-selected. There's not a
Right.
dud in the bunch. you know.
Exactly.
And then I get to cut them up and tape them. And then, like, when the police come in, they see this on the wall and they're like, well, that was the point of it. I was
Yeah.
making,
Yeah, that was a fictional you, in
Yeah.
a way. You were that
like, gas.
character.
I didn't,
Yeah.
But,
It should be
And-
shown alongside Peter's pictures of Bruce masturbating.
yeah, like
That guy, Bruce masturbating.
Right. Exactly. Well, I want to talk about Hujar in a minute because he's such an important figure, I think, for all of us in different ways. But if you, Nan, could talk a little bit about photographing yourself, just how that helped things hang together and what that meant in terms of certainly the early photographic projects you worked on. Because it was really, really important that you punctuated them with.
I think the
With
most
you.
important time for me to photograph myself was in, like, when I was talking about the late 80s.
Right.
When I came out of a rehab and I didn't know who I was and I didn't fit into my skin. So I photographed myself constantly to try to fit into my skin. That was the time that it actually served a purpose like that.
Mm-hmm.
The other times it was just, I'm here, I guess. And I would hand the camera. I guess the picture of me battered
Right.
is really important in my work. I mean, I gave the picture to my friend who was with me. And to me, what's so sad about the picture is that I put lipstick on.
I think about that a lot, actually. It's one of the
And-
things I talk to my students about.
And actually, a male photographer claimed that I set the picture up and I hadn't really been battered. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I can see how you might be open to that, although it's clearly not the case.
It's insane. But yeah, that picture, that self-portrait was to just, so I wouldn't go back to the guy.
Right.
So I guess a lot of the pictures were like evidence of my existence and of what I was doing.
And you use them that way for yourself, as evidence of something to yourself
Yeah.
about who you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really important thing to think about. And again, it's a way of using photography that we probably don't talk enough about when we talk about self-portraits.
One of my slideshows is all self-portraits called All By Myself. From a kid to, it's an Eartha Kitt song called All By Myself, Beautiful at 40. So it's from a kid till I'm 40. It's one of my slideshows. So I've been looking at self-portraits a lot because I'm putting the book together.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed, and we'll jump to this, and then I want to go back to the pomegranate show.
Oh, God.
These.
Did I really do that? Is
Yeah,
that
well,
something
that's
I
my
put
question.
out
Do
in
you really
public?
do that?
I don't know.
Because that was all printed together. I think you put that.
Yeah, I do grids a lot,
Yeah.
but I don't remember this one. Where'd you find it?
Did I get this from?
I'm sure it's real.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Why do I think I got it from Lisson Gallery? That
Oh,
may
that
have been
sounds
where it showed
right.
up.
Yeah. Wow.
But I was very interested in you collaging yourself. Something that Jack does, kind of in his sleep. But this isn't how I think of you. I wondered if what you were thinking when you were kind of putting these together.
I make a lot of grids.
Do you?
Yeah. And some of them are like sensual about hair or veils, or and some of them are color grids that are based on color field painting. My attempt to, because I'm a huge fan of color field painting.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a red, a pink, a yellow, huge grids. They're not like Jack's, they're much more, I really envy Jack's freedom. And some of my very favorite work of yours is the multiples pinned up, including in the show.
Right.
It's beautiful. And then there's one where he's turned, like he's all in the same direction. Do you have that?
Yeah, I think I do, actually. Let me go back, and I should be able to find it again. It's going to take a minute. But when we go back into pomegranates, we should be able to find it. There's incredible portraits in this.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, too, because it's so important.
And
We'll
still
talk about
lives.
flowers.
Still lives.
Let's see where it is. It's coming up. Those are all the black and whites, are they not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So that was the first work I ever saw of yours, was little men, collaged on the wall.
We're getting there. We're
Yeah.
getting there, folks. Oops.
We've seen the whole show, but
Each one of these can be kind of taken apart, and we can talk about all the stuff in it, but I'm trying to get to the piece you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
there.
These guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your reaction to these, you saw these are kind of early on.
When was this one done?
This one, 87. And then there's one, 89, that if you go back further was it was the first piece I ever showed in New York. Kind of like 10.
Yeah, these kind of,
Yeah.
not that one, but yeah, that's the first work I ever saw of Jack's.
Yeah, wait a second, because it was the first thing I ever showed. Go back 10.
the artist.
There's so much to talk about.
Do you want to go back through before the
Yeah.
Lisson show? Okay.
There's the James Dean
That's
one.
the James Dean. Okay.
Oh.
That's the James Dean.
And that was the first thing I ever called self-portrait, even though I had always, I had a few selfies too, holding the camera up, but I would just call them like a picture of me, as opposed, self-portrait always seemed too, you don't call yours self-portraits, do you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you Oops. Isn't it like Nan on
no,
a
I wrote
train?
SP. I called them SP.
I always thought they were like Nan
Yeah.
on
Nan
a
on a
train,
train.
or
Sometimes
Nan battered.
it's
or
weird because sometimes it's Nan and sometimes it's self-portrait, and I don't know why.
Well, stick with the other thing.
Okay.
Self-portrait is so So that's why I never did. No, but I think of them as like Nan on a train. Nan and Rhea. Nan. It's a distance. Anyway,
Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
That's the
that's
first thing I ever saw.
so that's the first thing I ever showed in New York, and it was in a summer group show, and because there's young people here, some. It was, I don't know, like I learned these pins from my first job in New York City, which was working in a window for an old-time window display guy who, handed me a box of these straight pins and said, "These are your best friend," and because you could use them for everything. It wasn't like it wasn't Bergdorf's windows. It was like downtown job lot. You had to pin as many things into the fucking window as you could. You could also make the sign department, make your little sign, and it would be the easel. I don't know, straight pins. And I just always used them as a tool ever since then. And it was a way to get this on the wall. Like normally you would want this to be either like sealed under plexi with a metal frame or da-da-da, you know what I mean? I wanted it to still have, this is after the beefcake collage.
Right.
It's like a new version. This is my arty version of that, like
Exactly. This is
instead of a
toned up
serial
and-
killer, I'm a butterfly, an insect collector.
Yeah.
And I had all these pictures of one single guy that I was sort of obsessed with for a long time. And collectively, they made something, you know what I mean? And like,
For me, it was really new, and I was so impressed.
Thank you.
I fell completely in love with your work from then on.
Sweet.
This piece,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it before.
And it is a paradox, too, because on the one hand, you have this like real sort of push to get bigger and to become more important and to make that space in the museum world. It's actually an art space, not a photo space, in a way.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you have a lot of people going small, trying to figure out how to do combinations, how to do sequences, how to set things up in the gallery that are not going to be, again, those really, really immersive kinds of things, but immersive in a different way. That's why, these collages are really interesting. I remember once a gallerist said to me, this was probably 20 years ago, he said, "You know what, there's one thing I will never look at, and that is I will never look at collage work." And now, this stuff makes perfect sense to all my students. It makes perfect sense. Because a lot of the way they deal with photography is in pieces. It comes to them on the internet, it comes to them in, on all the social media platforms, so it makes perfect sense. And it's one of the things, it's great to be able to go back and look at this work in a different context where that idea of combining things to get to a point is really quite important.
I think it's important, this talk about materiality in terms of people working digitally, like all their work being in their Instagram feed.
Right.
I think it's important to have physical work out there, not just on a screen.
Wasn't one of the things, Jack, you said to me when we were talking, you said, like, make a zine, okay? Make zines. If you're talking to younger photographers, don't tell me to go to your Instagram feed. Don't say, "Oh, I'll come by the gallery," but like give people something that they can actually put their hands on.
Oh, yeah, I'm a big believer in I'm a big believer, like Nan, in books. Like, to me, books are the optimum way to receive photography in your lap here. The print on the wall is just this manifestation of the need to sell something, or whatever editions. So like it's a created rarity, sort of. Like,
Right, the thing that somebody gets to keep. And
but
whatever.
a book you can have, and like that's how you want to do it. You don't
And look at it your own time. Yeah.
and make yours go back and forth, and it's not like I don't consider photos particularly decorative.
In the sense that they don't furnish a room.
Yeah, somehow.
Well, people buy it for that.
I'd rather have a poster, on the other hand. Yes. So thus you get my folded thing. Like, to me, that seems okay. Like, a poster is fine.
And you had early experience with poster as a kind of an ideal
Yeah,
form,
I loved
right?
hearing that
Yeah.
the other day, Jack.
Yeah, when you were, you know,
The dream of a poster.
yeah, the dream of a poster. I can't
Well,
go
I don't know.
big,
Didn't you guys go to like, Spencer Gifts and look through the posters on the rack and be like, oh, I wish I had $5. Or my mother wouldn't let me put things on the wall, or like,
But it was about you thinking.
But it was like seeing a picture that big
Yeah.
that you could own, and I wasn't thinking in terms of like an Ansel Adams print. Or
No.
like, you know what I mean? It was just like a movie star I like that big in my room. Yes.
right, I had Allen Ginsberg in my room.
Oh, right. That's a good one. That goes for a lot now. The one where you see the pubes.
No, I didn't have that one.
Oh.
I think I had Allen Ginsberg's pot picture where he's, he was
Okay, yeah.
standing on the street.
Well, these all ones that used to seem expensive to me at $5 now are like 200. On the internet. But to me, it seems worth it.
So I want to kind of jump to yet another piece here. One of the things that I loved about your work and work that I saw in the studio, and also about some of the pieces in the Lisson Gallery show, and I have this one up just because I like it so much. This is from the Regan projects, isn't it?
Which one do you like so much?
Well, what I like is this one, the green one with the tape
green
on
one.
it, And I was thinking about how,
The green one in the middle.
yeah, over there,
And what is it?
right? It's just it's
bubble wrap.
It's bubble wrap with pieces.
You're so
with,
creative.
Yeah, with pieces of like what, black tape on it, isn't it?
Because it came, it was like,
Genius.
I'm a inveterate, like I grew up with like, World War II mom, and use it up, make it do or do without. And so like bubble wrap I keep, especially if it's green, especially if it came with like black tape. So you're talking about COVID, the way I got to this zany thing was like being by myself in COVID.
Right.
And P.S. the other thing I would say to young people, pinning 3 dozen photographs to the wall was something that I could do in 1989, or I think it was 89, because it seemed like if you don't do it now, you could be dead in 2 years. You know what I mean? So do whatever the fuck you want, and yell at the person to put it in their show, and you know what I mean? Like,
Right. This is what
get
I'm
it
doing.
going.
Yeah.
Because it might not, if not now, when? It wasn't a guarantee that you were going to live 5 more years. And so the same thing happened with COVID. I'm in the studio by myself, and I was pretty like, COVID, schmovid, But they worked you in such a way that it did seem for a minute like when all the streets were empty and like everyone was like, is it the end of the world? It's the end of the world again. So
Yeah, just like that guy with the machine gun and
exactly. It's
gonna fight his way out.
Okay, so I've been thinking how cool that bubble wrap looks. What if we just pin it up? 2 sheets, 3 sheets. I think that'll do. And I'm by myself again in the artistic serial killer. I'm thinking the bubble wrap with the black tape is pretty good. And why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's
We might
cheap
be dead.
stuff. Yeah,
And so that's, I think, where I get to this, and also sort of being 60, I'm like, what the fuck, I'll do what I want, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
It's bubble wrap, pinned to the
Yeah.
wall, what of it? And does it, I think it satisfies as a painting. I can't be I'm not, I like color field painting too,
Yeah.
but painting intimidates the fuck out of me, but pinning that up like that.
There are,
I
I
think
should
it
point out,
holds,
in the
you know what I
Regan, in the
So-
Lisson Gallery show, there are
Same thing with
real
the-
paintings that Jack did. Real paintings.
Yeah, and then there's real paintings, which are pretty, whatever.
Were those the one that Simon Watson said, okay, but what's in the boxes?
None of those paintings are in there.
Oh, no, okay.
None of those paintings.
And you want to tell that story about, again, because it's really germane to your movement, kind of the way you became who you are in that early experience.
I guess it's a long story. Go to another picture then.
Which, and at, okay.
Forward, maybe,
Yeah,
I
okay.
think.
These are wonderful.
Okay, but wait a second, back up.
Okay,
Let's get
okay.
into the
Sorry,
green one
my
for a
bad.
second to see if people believe what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No? You know?
Yeah?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Definitely.
Or it could be floating in the South Seas in the big pile of plastic. In the
Yeah,
ocean.
exactly
You know?
right, exactly. I mean, all these demonic materials, you know, it's, like you said, it's just trash, and then all of a sudden it becomes incredibly poignant, really beautiful, totally something else. And that's what I love.
And green and black, it's such
Yeah,
a
what's
chic
wrong with that?
combination. It's the colors of decadence.
Yeah. Let's go for it. Well, and
Go for it. Forward. Sorry, we have to do this.
Come on.
Oh, maybe it's way too far ahead. But, like, you know, you'll never want to see the show after this.
I know, this is the problem, of course. We've totally crabbed the act.
Sorry, it's because we don't have a laptop up here that we can just go directly.
Yeah. Well, let's go back.
It's okay.
Do we find it? Yeah, there we go. Those are the paintings I was
No, back
thinking.
up one. I'll
Okay.
do it off this because it brings the bubble wrap back into play.
This one?
No, one forward.
Not that one.
Forward. I think you're going backward.
I am. Do you want me to go forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Forward.
I'll do what you tell me.
Okay, wait.
Up.
Stop. Go back.
Okay. We're back.
Okay, see this little bubble wrap piece of photography there? That was one of the early prints that he wants me to tell a story about. It's a 20 by 30 print that was made on Houston Street at like a photo, not like,
Not
you
like
know,
a good
H&I or whatever, like a photo, like bring your snapshots.
Right.
And I walked in there one day with this whole like, how do I do color photography? It's so expensive. And, you know, and so they advertised this poster with like a Puerto Rican girl at her sweet 16, 20 by 30 poster, make your memories into posters, $9.99. And I went and had a few done, and they came back looking great in this sort of fucked up, great looking way. Anyway, the story Lyle wants me to tell is like when I was trying to get ahead before I had any hope of a show, I was making paintings because you made paintings. And during AIDS, I was making all my paintings were about like, they were, I don't know, like flesh, bruised flesh. Like, you know, I read someplace, paint your worst nightmare, and mine was acne. So it was all like horrible acne, like skin. And they were very serious and very like this. And he would come and look and be like, yeah, okay, yeah. You know, about the body and blah, blah, blah. Something, whatever. But he came back and he came back again. It wasn't like, this sucks, I'm not coming back. He came back again. The second time, I had more paintings thinking like, now I'm doing it really good and you're gonna like these. But I had 50 of these prints made because I got my first credit card, which had $500 worth of credit on it. And I blew the whole thing on 50 of these pictures. And
Same
I,
image or different?
no, just 50 different images from the last 10 years that I hadn't been able to print because, you know, it's expensive. And so on the way out, he said, like, what are these? And I was like, oh, these new photographs. But again, like, they were just amusing myself on a certain level. And I said, I'll show them to you. And so I started pinning them up with my straight pins. And then at the end of the thing, he was like, do you want to show these at my space in 2 months in September? And so that
The
was my
photographs.
first, yeah,
Yeah.
the photographs.
Yeah.
And so how did this get wrapped?
How did this get wrapped is like, you know how your work shows up at shitty auctions in the country sometimes? And it's going for $175?
I do.
So you buy it,
That's
and
what
it
happened?
came back like that's, oh,
You bought your own.
I bought my
Yeah.
own.
Good.
And then I never, because like, you know,
It's
you're
good.
never gonna get that kind of print again.
Right,
Like, I'm not obsessed with buying my own work, but that print will not happen again.
Right.
And so why leave it there?
Exactly.
But I never unwrapped it, and then when I was making this blue array, I call them, I thought like, oh, let's haul out that. And I sort of leaned it there thinking, we'll unwrap it for the show. But then I was like, why? The like bubble wrap goes so nice with the blown up denim, and like just leave it in the bubble wrap.
I love the way your mind works.
I guess.
I
Is
do.
it working or is it just being lazy?
No, it's the opposite of lazy. The opposite of lazy.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that comes through, you go to Pomegranates, it's like a lot of unhealthy mental activity. I mean, there's a lot of, there's a
called
lot of
creativity.
ideas. Yeah, we could call it that, right? There's a lot of just, let's try this. Oh, yeah, let's try that. I mean, there's wonderful things that happen. For example, let's go back here. Like this corner, and we have to kind of build this out a little bit. This is the blue corner. It's got some paintings, it's got some driftwood, it's got water up above, and it's got wall drawing, and then it's got the piece that you just saw over on the wall. And it's also, no, I think, where's the vitrine that kind of anchors this?
Keep going, maybe a little.
Yeah, there it is, with the beach towels. And, I was just so struck by, behind us is the blue corner. I was so struck by how there's a feeling of kind of everything being sort of, I'm going to use this word, and I probably shouldn't, but there's a certain sacredness to it. I suppose that's a little too heavy, but there's a way in which these are like, almost like reliquaries, or there's something really, really precious about it, even though there's all this energy and there's stuff happening and there's a lot of jokes, and yet they're kind of anchored by this incredible quietness or something, and maybe it's just the white towels. I mean, it's also a little unnerving as well because it's sort of medical as well, but I don't know, just thinking about how you installed the show, just what was going on?
Well, I installed the show because, like the show you saw before with all the colorful things and the green bubble wrap was the first time I was making a show this late in life, and all the spaces I get to show. I've arrived at such a place that the galleries that want to show me are huge, cavernous things, and I'm used to small, tiny little spaces that have been painted and have radiators, and so you sort of have to conquer that, or I feel like I do, because I don't make the kind of work that just flies onto those walls and looks like $1 million. So I kind of try to have to figure out how to make it intimate, and I don't make so much of, like, I have ADD, so there's not like 100 paintings. There's like 5 that I did in 80, and then this that I do whatever I want, which I'm not advocating. It's not a good idea. You should stick to one row, hoe it hard, and make that your thing. Because it doesn't really work out so well, except when you're old and you got a back archive and a big space, and you can do whatever you want somehow. And what was my point? Oh, so that show, the show I did in LA was the first time I did that at this side of like expertise, and I sort of taught myself, like, okay, yeah, maybe you think of yourself as unskilled, but there's what's the skill you have? Putting things together and making it work.
Yes.
And I kind of like saw that in this show, like, wow, I did it. And then everybody else in Los Angeles, it was like a sort of big hit. And the new gallery I show with, Lisson Gallery, saw the show, and of course, could you do one like that? I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, part of what people liked about that show was it had an installation in it that gets a lot of attention from my early days of a record player and like.
Yes, and we click through that on screen.
Yes, you click through it on
and it's a
stage.
kind of wonderful
Maybe you noticed
piece.
And it shows up a lot. Anyway, so I was like, oh, I don't have another one. I can't just do those things off the top of my head. And what would I, make a wall in my fancy apartment on Fifth Avenue now? Nobody wants to see that. So, I was like, what if we borrowed that piece and had that be the, okay, there's your installation, there's your real, like, you know.
Your object, your vitrine.
And built this, then it had to, I wanted it by the front door, and because the Whitney wouldn't loan it to you if it's like in 10 feet of the front door, so I had to move to the back, and so whatever. It became part of, like, it became a nice thing between the beachy blue and the black and white wall that it's against there. And the sacredness, yes, you know, I do think it's, I don't want to find myself saying it's sacred.
No, I know.
And I don't want to find
listening to you
myself
do
saying it's spiritual, but it might be, you know.
What's the black image on the top?
The black image on the.
Yeah, that looks like a photograph of fabric.
It's fabric.
It is
It's
fabric.
fabric I got for a backdrop. And Martin, did you sew this for me? It was like the shiny. I wanted to take a like 50s looking picture, and so I got fabric for a backdrop. But before it went hanging, I was like, yeah. And then it's folded, so it's like whatever.
Yeah. No, I do think, you know, talking about getting older, and I don't want to harp on this because we're all, how should we say?
I'm not complaining. I like it.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got mixed feelings, as I think many of us do.
But we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, but that's
but
the whole.
we can do whatever we
That's
want.
the thing about age.
And the other thing that's so compelling to me is just that idea of being able to use the archive,
Yeah.
and it's not an inert thing that is kind of like your tomb, but it's actually your resource. It's just this incredibly vast resource that you can just go back and reconfigure and rethink and
All of my work is
reimagine.
from my archive now.
Yeah.
I have thousands of slides, like thousands. So,
And it always changes. It's constantly changing,
Yeah.
right? And that's really interesting to me. I think that's certainly something that certainly younger photographers that I know perfectly understand. You know, it's not about selecting those best things,
No.
and these are going to be the things that go in the book forever. No, they're going to get recycled, rethought. I don't like these. I'm tired of these. And that to me is like an incredibly dynamic and refreshing way to deal with, you know, the images that you made. You can interrogate them again. You can use them again, make them you again.
yeah, I use the same image in different sideshows,
Yeah,
contextualize
exactly.
them differently.
Yeah. I want to do one more thing.
And I
Guys-
think Jack and I have something big in common, which is a respect for the bad pictures.
Oh yeah.
Like the magic of, you know,
Oh, absolutely.
double exposure in the 80s when there was no digital way to do that. It was literally an accident. And I think-
Absolutely.
I love the accidents.
I mean, you're both, how should we say, you could both be accused of making bad pictures of
Yep.
bad subjects. And that's something we all understand now. Because the bad turns out to be, like you say, the
Magic.
well, yeah, it's magic, and it's the indecisive moment. You know, which I
Yeah.
really love. I love that idea that it's where you're looking in the wrong direction, or it's where that something happened that you didn't notice, or you only barely noticed it, or it was the wrong time, or the person doing the wrong thing. And those are the pictures that give you the real feel of what it was like to be alive.
Yeah, I never believed in the decisive moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think most of us do these days. I just don't think we think that's what photography's for. I did
I
want
want to hear Jack talk about the portraits.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
That's
Speaking of
exactly-
bad. Okay.
Yeah, speaking
That's
of
a good
bad.
setup.
Speaking of good.
Not those. You want to talk about these as bad? No. Let's go back.
No.
Those.
Yeah, let's talk about these, because this is a big move for you. I mean, this is kind of like go big or go home. And I want to talk about making portraits and how hard that is, and what you're trying to do with these, because these are, you know, that kind of black and white.
Yeah, which is not
Almost
a
like
thing
so-
I ever do.
No.
I guess it was just a moment, like I was saying. Nan set it up. Like those, you know, crappy pictures that I got made for $10. They're bad. You know what I mean? Some of them are out of focus. Some have hair on them. Some have scratches. Some are pretty good in the negative. But you know, I made a certain amount of my career on the idea that it was like anonymous or kind of bad, or anybody could do it, or snapshot. Like they're snapshots, and you know, I've tried to conquer that over the years. Like, no, I really know what I'm doing, please. This is, I never used a fancy camera. I can't really focus well. Somehow I got myself a fancy camera
How did
and
that
started to use it and be really and at the same time, like a big printer in the studio, which I never had either. I was like, wow, these look so good. Wow. You know, autofocus, thank goodness for autofocus, but like it's in focus and it's so sharp and it looks so good. Like, I'm like Avedon. And so I just thought, like, let's try this. Let's try making a good picture, you know, sharp, in focus, subject in the middle, no blurs, you know. And then also with getting old, like, you know, I like to spend a certain amount of my time in the presence of naked people. And how do I do that if I'm not, like, you know, on the market?
Clubs,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And so
sex clubs.
I'm an artist. I can do whatever I want. Would you like to pose for me, the famous artist? And, you know, come to my studio. And if you're interested, you could take your clothes off and we could make some pictures. And so I
People
started
need to
doing
understand something. That whole thing can happen without any abuse.
that. Yeah, no,
I
and
think
that's what
people are really scared.
Yeah,
When they hear
absolutely.
you talk about that, I'm sure
Absolutely.
they're scared. But I mean, I think people need to know that, you know, that's a
Yeah, and I'm-
gentle giving thing.
And I
It's not
didn't
abusive.
even when my pictures were of people on the edges of beds, I wasn't having sex. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just about, like, making a picture. I want it to be pretty. I want to leave a document of pretty behind me.
But it's collaboration. It's the person knows and they're.
Yeah, exactly. So it's another reason, like, I don't pay these people because I don't want anybody to say, like, I did it for the money. And I just want them to, like, if you're interested, we could do this. And I try to ennoble them. And I also try, like, I'm scandalized by the amount of, like, I don't know, all the stuff on the internet. Like, everybody's so sleazy and so on offer and so, like, you know,
Yeah.
have boners in the sweatpants plopping around. You know what I mean? Like, I like it, yes.
Where are you?
It comes up, but
Where are you?
I don't want to.
I haven't been there.
I don't want to be part of that.
I missed it.
So, like, I tried with these pictures to make them, you know, not
Beautiful.
distanced, but, like, I don't feel like anybody's on offer here.
Formal. Yeah.
Formal.
Yeah.
And I did that kind of to harken back to how they made physique photography that I collected and taped together like a freak in the 80s, like, which was like, we are presenting these purely for their artistic value
Right.
and as a reference for artists. So that's like, I just thought, I also get a big kick out of, as a photographer, being able to ape certain styles and like,
So Avedon?
yeah, so this was like, kind of like Avedon, or like, you know, this one, like, he's like, the idea of like a movie, you know, how they do like promotional stills where they're acting in front of a backdrop.
Right.
So that's what this guy is doing. But it, you know, I don't know. So I just had to do that and get them all in focus and present them in a really formal way. And it's kind of like a tee-hee, but it's kind of like what I want to do.
Kind of like a what?
A tee-hee, like,
What's a tea?
you know, like I'm laughing, like
A giggle.
I'm doing the thing, like I will always do the thing I rail against, which is like, oh, framed big pictures that cost a fortune to get on the wall. I hate that fucking shit. Okay, this is what the show's gonna be, you know. And the show originally, you'll be happy to hear, was gonna just be these. I'm gonna be a formal photographer.
No.
It's gonna be a room full of these pictures, and they're gonna like.
You were really going to do that?
Yeah, for a minute, right? And then I was like, oh, no, I like here. How about a little of this and a little of that?
And the next thing you know.
And the next thing you know, we come up with this
Yeah.
show, which if you haven't seen, I would really like you to. That's the whole point of dragging you all here tonight.
That's right. This is just a pitch.
And Nan,
Just
making her
a
come from
pitch.
Brooklyn all the way. Is like, go to my show.
Yeah.
I want to do, everybody's been very patient, but I want to do one last thing here.
I want to talk about size for a minute.
Want to talk about slides?
Size. Yeah.
Let's talk about size. Yeah. Does size matter?
I want to go smaller.
Yeah.
Like, I've been working with these cinema reconstructors in Bologna, Italy, who are like the masters of restoring cinema. And they're working with me on my slides because a lot of them got damaged. About 20% of them faded and turned purple. So they're helping me restore them. And somebody wanted them to be blown up to like 1100 DPI. And they looked at them, they're old analog slides, and they said, that's not in this slide. When you start blowing up that big, you're adding something that's not real from that slide. It becomes...
You have to add in information. Or
Yeah, that
whatever.
doesn't exist. So it really was a revelation for me. It just happened a few weeks ago. That's why I'm talking about it. And then, so now I want to go smaller rather than bigger. I want to go back to the kind of the original sizes, you know, when I printed myself, like 1620.
Right.
Not 40 by 60,
Right.
which is what galleries want.
Right.
So-
Now you feel under pressure to get bigger, to get bigger, to
Of
get
course,
bigger. Yeah.
but, you know, I'm good at, like, fighting back.
Just charge the same amount.
Well, I don't know. I wish they didn't pay. I wish that galleries understood the beauty of small jewels.
Yeah, it was very interesting to. I don't, if either one of you saw when the Brooklyn Museum did its Gary Winogrand show a couple of years ago, and that was all recreating the slideshow that Winogrand originally did. That's at MoMA. So you walked in, and that's the first thing you know. There was just a projection right there of the slides and the slide tray going around. And then inside, they had much more blown up digital versions, but those were also being projected. And that was really quite interesting because you were forced to make comparisons that kind of we weren't used to making between kind of digital projections and that early slide, you know, experience that we care about so much based on, you know, the work that you've done. And, you know, I think it was really a kind of a challenge. It was a deliberate challenge to people to think about how these images actually get translated from one form to another.
Like Eggleston, though, you know,
Yeah.
now he blows up really big.
Yes.
But those little, you know, dye transfers,
They're wonderful pictures.
the
They're wonderful
small,
pictures.
like,
Yep.
original prints, those are jewels.
Yeah, the Eggleston retrospective had those giant prints, and
Yeah.
I don't know how other people felt, but I just felt they were really kind of disastrous.
He said he doesn't care what size they are.
But what about the Avedon ones, those huge murals? Those are like
Those are
the
fantastic.
most incredible thing you've ever seen.
I mean, it's not wrong, you know. It's not that size is bad.
No, I know, but, you know, I'm just saying.
But I'm sensitive to that, especially when the work originates as a slide. That is what it is,
Yeah.
right? And you have to work from that. At least it seems to me that's where poignancy is.
Yeah. I mean, I guess digital pictures can be blown up as big as you want, but my old analog pictures, that information's not in them.
Yeah.
It's
No,
fake.
that's right. It has to
Yeah.
be added. I'm trying to see where we are on time. We should probably.
Oh, you wanted to talk about something, sorry.
Yeah, I did want. I mean, yeah, I do actually. Let's go here.
What time is it? They're starting to leave.
Are they? Let them go. I just want to get through some pictures I brought that I just wanted to. These are actually some wonderful portraits in here, but and it's this group of pictures coming up here. Let's go back. That group.
Yeah.
Okay. There's Jack's picture that was on the poster, I think, for the announcing this get together. And then there's a picture Nan shot in Egypt of a horse that she owned. And then there's two pictures below by Peter Hujar. And I kind of brought those in just because I wanted an excuse to bring in Peter Hujar's pictures. But I also brought these in because I wanted to think about photographing animals for just a minute. And Jack's pictures, that's a wonderful picture of those two horses. I can't get over it. As soon as I saw it, I just couldn't quite believe it. And Nan's picture, which is very, very personal, about the horse that you owned. And then these two pictures by Peter Hujar. And I just wondered, I guess what I'm really asking, if you responded to animals in photography, because there aren't any, not in art photography.
You
We are.
owned a horse in Egypt?
Oh, yeah.
When did that happen?
There's some lost years in there. I was in Luxor, and yeah.
I met those people that you knew in Egypt
Which one?
that were in the house with them. I had to, this is a good story. Want me to tell it to you? Because I
Which
don't think you
people?
probably know it. I was tasked with 3 days before Christmas going to photograph the Luxor house of Christian Louboutin.
Christian Louboutin, yeah.
And they were like, yeah, you know, it's all set up. He's got great taste. You're going to love it. We got there. There was nothing in the house.
Yep,
It was empty.
right.
And half the house was shared with this hippie family that looked like they walked out of Jean-Luc Godard, and like a baby and
Oh, yeah.
ashtrays and bottles every place. And they would be there, like looking into the courtyard, and we're shooting. And I was with this like really fussy Harper's Bazaar editor, and I was like, there's nothing in the house. And what do I do? But, you know, from years of being a set stylist and doing every job in the book, I was like, cut down some of those reeds, bring them in here. What about that camel? Can it get in the door? And so they brought a camel into the middle of the house for the pretty girls, you know, and the people were there taking, there's a camel in the house, you know, and this like hippie family or whatever, we're like taking pictures, and the editor was furious. She was like, they can't take pictures, tell them they can't. And I was like, who cares? They're fucking in the middle of nowhere. What are they gonna send the pictures? I don't care, you tell them. And she screamed at them, and they got really mad. And then it turned out, I saw them in your pictures years later.
Ah, those,
So they could have just sent these pictures.
those French people.
Yeah, they were French people living in Luxor.
I wasn't living with them.
Oh, you weren't?
No, I was living with, you know,
Oh, you don't have to
Egyptian man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But interestingly, this horse galloped right to Christian's house and dumped me in front of Christian's house
Oh,
one day.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But, you know, the original is ruined because this horse used to race in this old kind of race where somebody plays the flute and the horses run as fast as they can and then they stop.
Yeah.
And he was racing in that, and I went, and it was way in the middle of the desert. And the people in the village had never seen a European or American woman, and they'd never seen women's hair. And so the kids started throwing dirt at me and mud, and that mud was all over the camera. So that's what the picture is.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you buy the horse so that it wouldn't have to race in these horrible races? Like,
No, I let it race in those horrible
yeah.
races. It wasn't cruel, I don't think.
no, I'm not saying horrible. I just wondered like how.
No,
you
I
own
bought
it.
the
Or
horse
like
before
it was going to
that,
be like
yeah.
go to the glue factory, and you were like, no, I'll buy it.
Yeah, he wasn't the best horse, but yeah, he was still alive.
So cool. I'm so glad I asked.
Anyway, it's just the point.
But I
about-
mean, the way Peter photographed
Yeah.
animals,
Peter.
yeah.
I mean, they were never a species. It wasn't a dog. It was,
never.
you know, whatever the dog's name
Oh,
was.
yeah. These are.
And he was very, very close to animals. It's very hard to photograph.
Yeah.
But
and
Jack, tell you about how you got that incredible
Well,
picture.
you were the two that think that picture is so great. I'm just like, oh yeah, well, it's.
I think it's incredible.
Thank you. Again, another magazine story where it was all about these wild horses in the Camargue.
Oh,
near
yeah.
Arles.
yeah. Okay.
Do you know everybody knows the movie The Red Balloon, right?
Of course.
Red balloon appears to a little boy and he chases him around Paris. Well, that guy made a film much earlier than
Yeah.
that, 10 years before,
Right.
called Crine Blanc, which is the white mane.
Yeah, I know.
And a
I
white
know that.
horse appears to a little boy and takes him on this adventure through
Yeah.
the marsh.
In the
So we were trying to
Camargue.
cover that.
Yeah.
And I knew, you know, it wasn't going to be, and they were purposely making the horses do this thing, play.
Play.
And or fight, you know. I didn't want to say fight, but and I knew it wouldn't be a good picture unless I just went up close, and so I got in the ring and tried. You know, I still felt like I was kind of far away, but they were all like, "Be careful."
Yeah, it is.
So I just got in there and just snapped away.
It's
But of course,
gorgeous.
all I see is the building in the background, and you can't really see the face. But if you guys like it, I like it.
It's very courageous as well, like physically courageous.
We have to deliver, like with magazines. Well, at least with this creative director.
But how did they make the horses fight?
Oh, they have some like thing that they do. Whip them up.
That's worse than making it run.
It was gone. I have much prettier ones with the boy and light and splashing wind.
No, this is fabulous.
Whatever.
We'll take this.
This is letting the horses be horses.
Yeah.
I want to thank both of you for spending the time. It's been really, really delightful.
Thank you. And thank you all for sitting here so patiently. And thank you, Nan, for doing this.